The wind howled like a wounded beast across the plains that night. The sky had turned a fierce shade of black, streaked with angry flashes of lightning. Rain came down in sheets, lashing the earth, swallowing every sound except the growl of the storm. In a small cabin on the edge of Red Creek Valley, Clara Jennings, a widow barely past 25, struggled to keep her candle from blowing out. Her roof leaked, her walls creaked, and her small daughter, Lily, whimpered from the corner bed. Clara had known storms before, dust storms, snowstorms, the kind that stripped everything bare, but nothing like this. She was alone. Her husband, Daniel, had died 2 winters ago in a cattle stampede, leaving her with nothing but a name and a handful of debts. She'd sold nearly everything except this tiny cabin and a few chickens that somehow survived the foxes. But Clara was stubborn. She'd made a promise at Daniel's grave. She would raise their daughter no matter what the world threw her way. As another crack of thunder split the sky, Clara's old hound started barking. Then, faintly through the storm, she heard something else, a shout. She froze. It came again, weaker this time. A man's voice. Clara grabbed her shawl, pushed open the heavy door, and stepped out into the rain. Her boots sank in the mud as she fought the wind, her lantern flickering wildly. She followed the sound until she saw him, a man lying face down near the creek, half covered in mud, one arm twisted beneath him. His horse lay dead a few yards away, struck by lightning. Without a thought for herself, Clara knelt beside him. His coat was soaked through, his face pale under a layer of grime. She rolled him over with effort, gasping at how cold he was. Sir, can you hear me? No response. Only a shallow breath. Clara hooked her arms under his shoulders, gritting her teeth as she dragged him back toward her cabin inch by inch. It took nearly an hour to pull him inside, close the door, and light the fire again. She stripped off his coat and boots, wrapped him in every blanket she had, and began to rub warmth into his hands. Lily stirred from the bed and blinked sleepily. Mama? Who's that? A man caught in the storm, Clara said softly. The Lord sent him our way, and we're going to help him. For 2 days, the man drifted in and out of fever. Clara tended him like she had her husband when he was sick years ago, mixing herbs, pressing cool cloths to his head, spooning broth between his lips. He was tall, broad-shouldered even under the blankets, his hands rough but his skin uncalloused, a contradiction she didn't understand. When he finally opened his eyes, they were a startling shade of blue, like the sky after rain. Where am I? He rasped. In my home, Clara replied. You were caught in the storm. You're lucky to be alive. He looked around the humble cabin, the patched walls, the kettle on the fire, the small child sleeping with a doll made of rags, and frowned as if trying to place himself. I'm in your debt, he said finally. My name's... Don't speak yet, she interrupted. Rest first. But he smiled faintly, stubborn as any cowboy. Name's Caleb Westmore. The name meant nothing to her then. To anyone else in town, though, it was a name that carried weight. Caleb Westmore, the reclusive rancher who owned more land than anyone from Red Creek to Silver Ridge. Some called him a millionaire, others a myth. Few had seen him up close, and those who had said he lived like a man haunted by something. Clara just saw a man who needed saving. Days passed, and Caleb's strength returned slowly. He watched Clara move through the cabin, quiet, capable, graceful in her simplicity. She chopped wood, mended clothes, and hummed lullabies to her daughter by firelight. She had the kind of beauty that didn't scream for attention. It whispered of endurance, of love that didn't quit. You live here alone? Caleb asked one morning as he tried to stand. Just me and Lily. The town doesn't take kindly to widows with no means, Clara said, not bitterly but as a simple truth. But we manage. He studied her for a moment, his jaw tightening. You deserve better than managing. Clara smiled softly. We all do, Mr. Westmore. But life doesn't hand out better, it makes you earn it. Something in her words struck him. He had spent years surrounded by people who only wanted his money or his name. Here, in this leaking cabin with a half-empty pantry, he found something money had never bought him, peace. He helped her fix the roof, chop wood, mend the chicken coop. Clara protested at first, saying he should rest, but she couldn't deny the warmth that grew between them. Lily took to him quickly, clinging to his hand, showing him her drawings in the dirt. "Mr. Caleb, you smile funny," she said one afternoon. He laughed, a sound rusty with disuse. "That's because I don't get much practice, little one." By the end of the week, Caleb was ready to leave. The storm had cleared, leaving behind fields glittering with morning dew. He stood by the door, his hat in hand, his heart heavier than he expected. "I'll send word from town," he told her. "You'll be repaid for all you've done." Clara shook her head. "I didn't help you for money, Mr. Westmore." He hesitated. "Then why?" She looked at him quietly. "Because you were someone's son once. Someone's brother. And if you died out there, someone would have grieved. No one deserves to be left alone in a storm." He swallowed hard, tipping his hat. "You're an extraordinary woman, Clara Jennings." When he left, the cabin felt emptier than ever. Weeks turned into months. Clara went back to her small routines, telling herself not to think about the man with sky-blue eyes. But every time the wind rustled through the prairie grass, she remembered the sound of his laughter, the look in his eyes when he watched her daughter sleep. Then one spring morning, the rumble of wagons came down the dusty road. Clara stepped outside, shielding her eyes from the sun. 3 men rode up, well-dressed, wearing the Westmore Ranch insignia. The lead man dismounted and handed her an envelope sealed with wax. "From Mr. Westmore," he said, tipping his hat. Clara frowned, opening it. Inside was a letter written in a careful, masculine hand, and a deed. "Mrs. Jennings, you gave me shelter when I had nothing. You showed me kindness when I had forgotten what it looked like. I cannot repay what you gave, but I can make sure you and your daughter never go hungry again. The land you live on is now yours. And if you'll allow it, I'd like to see you again. Caleb Westmore." Her hands trembled. She looked up to ask the men more, but they'd already turned their horses and ridden off. 2 days later, another storm rolled through Red Creek, but this one was softer, almost cleansing. Through the gray mist, Clara saw a rider approaching. It was him. Caleb dismounted, water dripping from his hat, and met her at the door. "I told you I'd send word," he said, smiling sheepishly. "You didn't have to give me land, Mr. Westmore." He took off his hat, eyes soft. "I didn't give you anything you didn't already earn. You saved my life. And more than that, you reminded me what living means." Clara looked at him for a long moment, her heart pounding. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because you saw a man in the mud," he said quietly. "Not the name, not the wealth, not the sins of his past. Just a man worth saving." The rain began to fall again, gentle and warm. Lily peeked out from behind her mother's skirt, beaming when she saw him.